It is treat day today. And today I'm going to teach you how to make chocolate beet muffins. And these are like fudgy and absolutely delicious. One of my favorite ways to get veggies into kids when they're not so sure about veggies is to kind of hide them. And this really hides the beets amazingly well. My kid absolutely loves these. They're really delicious. And definitely still a treat. So not tons of these, but every now and then a little bit of these fudgy beet muffins, we're all good. Let's get started. Wash your hands.
So we're going to start with a medium-sized bowl and a sieve, and then we're going to dump in there 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, followed by 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And we're going to mix those all around and get all the lumps out. Now I have doubled this recipe because I had 2 beets that I wanted to use, but I would suggest starting with doubling a recipe if you're baking with a kid because that's a little tricky. Then we're going to put in 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And you can tell here how I've doubled it because this is clearly not 1.5 cups of flour. And you can shake that sieve to get the flour through. Just be careful to keep it all in the bowl. That can be a little bit tricky for kids. All right, so here I am going to start to stir it around, and then I'm going to forget to add the salt. So we want to put in 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And most of the time salt's not going to have huge lumps in it, so I didn't put it through the sieve because it was just fine. And then mix that all around. In another bowl, I'm going to cream my butter, and that is a 1/4 cup of butter. And then I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of white sugar and 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And apparently the brown sugar helps it be moist. I'm going to mix it all around, and then we're going to add some oil, and that is a 1/4 cup of sunflower oil. You could probably use any type of vegetable oil for that. I don't get hung up on those little details. Also, like if you don't have any brown sugar and you just want to use white sugar, that's fine too. We're going to add in our eggs. Now, this recipe calls for 2 eggs. You can see that I have 4 eggs there. And sometimes it's helpful if you're cooking with kids to break those eggs in another bowl. One kid might be able to do that while the other kid is creaming the butter in our bowl. And it also just really helps keep the shells out, which is something we definitely want to be aware of. Now I'm going to add in a 1/4 cup of milk and stir that all around. At this point, you really want to make sure that you get as many of the lumps out of the butter as possible. I'm going to use a little beater to help me do that because once we start to add our dry ingredients, like I'm doing here, we don't want to overmix it because that is going to not help our muffins be all nice and fluffy. When we overmix muffins, they can become a little bit dense. So you want to really carefully mix in your dry ingredients. So you want to mix your wet ingredients as well as you can. And I like to put in my dry ingredients in thirds. So I put a little bit in, and then I give it a little stir around, and then I put a little bit more in, and then I stir it some more. You can hide vegetables in all sorts of things. Pureed cauliflower goes amazingly well in cheese sauce as well as tomato sauce. Sweet potatoes go really well in tomato sauce. And sometimes it just helps kids realize that actually those vegetables aren't as bad as they thought they were. So here you see I've added my last third, and I'm mixing it all, and I probably mixed a little more than I needed to. But that's just one of those tricky things that you need to practice, and I'm actually not much of a baker. Now, I've got 2 cups of grated beets here, but you only need 1 cup, and that's about 1 beet grated up. And then I'm going to fold that in, and then I have 1 cup of chocolate chips as well. So those are going in as gently as I can. I don't think I'm doing a very good job, but oh well. They're going to turn out absolutely delicious, even if they are a little dense. And then when that is all mixed up, I'm going to get my cookie sheet. And I've already greased this, and you can just use a little butter or lard with your fingers, and that's a fun job for kids. Or if people don't want to get their hands, you can use a little brush. And I'm going to evenly divide out my batter into each one of these cups. This recipe gives you about 12 muffins, but since I doubled it, I'll end up with 24. You can use a spatula to help with any of the stickiness. Now I'm going to take these and put it in my preheated oven at 355 Fahrenheit. And after 20 minutes, here they are. And I let them cool before I took them out, especially if you're going to do that with kids, you want to do it. It also helps them not fall apart. And they come out nice and easy. And they did turn out a little dense, but they're absolutely delicious. Hope you enjoy.